say, okay, I have a lot of money, but you have no money unless you take profits.
When the first ever spot ETF was created for gold 10x.
And the only thing I really knew was Bitcoin at the time, so I just invested very heavily into that. Rode it all the way up.
What's up?
My name is Jeff. Even the creators have said it's going to be the predecessor of CBDC.
What that taught me was that I need to be self-sufficient.
A solid DCA investment strategy, and pretend the red sell button doesn't even exist.
We about to go up like.
And we are live. What is up, my fellow degenerates? Thank you once again, as always, for joining us and spending a little bit of time with us here on your Wednesday evening. As always, I am joined today by our lovely and handsome panel of co-hosts, and we have a special guest in the house. She is a fellow content creator, a Richard Hart maxi. She is spearheading the Pulse Chain Tour, and she is the voice behind Sci-Vive and 15 Ways to Fix the World by Richard Hart. Please join me in welcoming AWildSJ. SJ, thank you so much for coming on and being with us. How are you, my dear? You're muted.
I said, hello, I'm fantastic. Thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, SJ, like I said, on behalf of our audience and the rest of our panel here, thank you for joining us. We obviously know who you are because you're you're knees deep within the Pulse Chain and Richard Hart ecosystem, and a lot of us here in our channel are also. But for those who might not be too familiar with you and your work, can you give us a little bit of an overview of exactly who you are, what you do for the Pulse Chain and the Richard Hart ecosystem community, and how did you fall into this wonderful ecosystem?
Yeah, absolutely. Happily. It's my favorite story, to be honest with you. Looking back on life and all the experiences that I've had and all the things that I've been a part of, there's nothing like what my life is doing right now. So to start off, I was looking for something to invest in. I had sold my home north of Austin, Texas, and without knowing it, this friend of mine didn't know that I had sold my home, but he knew that I had been interested in crypto back in the day. Some of you may know him. He goes by Crypto Kool-Aid. Now, Crypto Kool-Aid and I lived in Austin, Texas together many moons ago, and we met each other on the dance floor. So we both love drum and bass. We both love dancing. So that's how we met. And as the years went by, we stayed really good friends, and he found out that I was interested in crypto. And in 2017, I must have mentioned something about Bitcoin on Facebook because he reached out to me and he was like, hey, I see that you have Bitcoin, maybe you should think about investing in all these little coins, which I did. And then I just left it, forgot about it all, didn't touch it, moved away to Puerto Rico, completely unrelated to crypto, and then moved back. And fast forward now to me selling my home. Well, Kool-Aid comes to me, again, unknowing that I have powder. And he's like, hey, remember all those little coins I told you to invest in? Put it all into this. And it was Hex. And knowing knowing him in the way that I did, right? I was just like, well, I mean, you're the only friend I have that knows anything about any of this. So I guess I trust you. And he was like, look, you don't have to trust me. Don't trust me. Listen to these guys. And he gave me a few names. Crypto Coffee was one of them. Whales Only one. I'm trying to think of who else. But basically, I ended up listening to 6 months of Whales Only one because I had started taking an options trading class. I was, like I said, I was looking for somewhere to invest because I knew I wanted to do well with what I had. And after listening to just a couple streams, I was like, this guy's speaking my language. I absolutely understand where he's coming from, what he's talking about. And the way that he helped me understand what a share is, what the T share is and how that works. I was done. That was it. I was like, I don't need anything else. All the money that I had that I had put I looked into a 401k, I looked into a high yield savings account, and I looked into options trading, and I had all these little pockets of money. And I also had some set aside for crypto. Well, as I continued to learn about how Hex works and what a T-share is and how we earn yield every single day in Hex because of the share system, I was like, this is a no-brainer. Like, I need to be putting all of my money into this. So I did. And this, of course, this was like all my investment money, right? I didn't over leverage. And I also knew that I was taking a gamble. I'll be completely honest with you. I mean, I know that I could have left money in a 401k. I could have left money in a high yield savings account, but I'm glad I didn't. And, you know, and I'm still not in profit. Like, that was 2021 and we went up. And this, again, I was interested in crypto, but this is my first cycle. So I've never seen a bull market. I bought through as we were going up and you guys hit 50 cents or whatever, right? Like, I think it was like 5 cents. I bought 14 cents, 20 something cents. And then I wasn't paying attention because I was just listening and learning. Like, I didn't know where we were in the cycle or anything like that. And then since then, as you all know, we've been in this just like absolutely brutal bear market. I mean, up until super recently. So that's how I got into Hex and crypto in general. And I loved that I was learning something. I was just like, I love expanding my mind. I'm a constant student of the world, and I want to always be challenging myself to know more and to learn more. So after 6 months of being very sure about what I was doing with my money and investing that money into Hex, I thought, okay, so now I know. And I'd heard, I'd seen the community a little bit. I've been on Twitter, X now for, years before getting into crypto Twitter, right? And so I knew about other community members, and I'd heard of Richard Hart at this point. I hadn't heard of him before. I had no idea who he was. All I knew was that he was the guy that made this thing that I was invested in now. And so I started watching what Richard was doing, and I saw him doing these unboxing videos and like all this, like, this is the very, very beginning of him doing his outrage marketing. And I was just like, who is this guy? What is he doing? What is he about? Like, I feel really secure about what I've just done, but do I trust this man? Like, do I need to? Like, what is it that, like this guy is about? What is he up to? So I basically took I took time to figure out who Richard was. And I was like, okay, what's this guy about? And through that rabbit hole, I found SciVive. I found out that he'd written this book. And I was like, well, if you're going to learn something about someone, probably should read the book that they've written, right? Like, that makes a lot of sense. So I decided to go down that rabbit hole, and I found that there was the only way to read SciVive was you could download this wretched PDF, which is still the only thing available in written format, unfortunately. If anybody actually wants a better copy, you can DM me. I have the edited version, but it's not like, it's not ready for print yet or publishing yet. Like, we'll see. I don't know. But anyways, and then there was an AI version, like a robotic version of an audiobook. And I'm a traveler, like even before the Pulse Chain tour, like I travel all the time. So I'm an audiobook fan. And I decided to start listening to this audiobook, and I just couldn't. I was like, this is wretched. Like, and reading the words and seeing what it was that he was talking about, I thought to myself, like, this doesn't do this book justice. Like, I feel like I really want to get into this, but I can't because I cannot listen to a robotic voice that has no emotion and sounds like it's not asking you a question or making a statement. I couldn't handle it. So I thought, I've never done this, but I'm going to read it anyways. Why don't I just read it out loud and record myself reading it so that there is a human inflected version of this book? And the only thing I'd done that was even close to that is acting. Like, I have a background in doing commercial acting and stand-in work and things like that, but I'd never done an audiobook before. And this is the craziest part to me now, looking back in hindsight, is just like, I had no clue. I didn't know that Richard had already changed people's lives. I didn't know that Richard had already like stood up there with a top hat behind a pink or in front of a pink curtain, you know, trying to save people and, you know, tell people how to live their lives in a better manner so that they could live longer and do more with their time. I didn't know that. I didn't know that he had already affected so many people, or that he had so many followers, or, you know, none of it really, like, at that time meant much to me. I just was selfishly like, I want to read this book and maybe someone else will enjoy this too. So that's how Sci-Vive happened. I was really just wanting to do something almost selfishly for me so that other people, you know, I thought, you know, maybe someone else will hear that and like it as well. And it was just, it's been unbelievable. The feedback that I got after doing the first audiobook, I got so much amazing feedback, and so many people told me, you know, I wouldn't have read this without you. I wouldn't have heard this. I'm dyslexic. I can't read, like this, that, and the other thing. So I decided, after it was so widely, like, you know, praised, I was like, you know what? I really want to do this justice now. And I decided to take an audiobook recording, like a vocal narration class. So I took the class, and now there's a second edition of it. They're both on my YouTube, but the second edition is formatted and edited so that it can be on Audible. And that's kind of like on the back burner with Richard. Like, he knows it's finished. He knows that that's like sitting there waiting for his, like, not necessarily his approval. Like, he doesn't need to approve it. We just need to talk to his lawyers, like his legal team, and get it set up so that once it's on Audible, Richard gets the royalties and the credit for all of that. So and then I couldn't stop. Like, I loved it so much. Like, Sci-Vive literally changed my life. That book changed my life in multiple ways. And as a woman, right? Like, for a woman to say that about this book, I think is very unique, because it's written by a man, and it's catered more to men in general. I don't necessarily agree with every single thing he says, but most of it makes a whole lot of sense. And a lot of it is very practical, and very much like, even in the slightest thing, like, for example, one of the good examples is when I started out in this community, when I started doing Sci-Vive, my handle that I chose was Sci-Viving SJ. So I wasn't always AWildSJ. I was Sci-Viving SJ before that. And as I read Sci-Vive, there's a whole part in it where Richard talks about the fact that you need your own brand. You should be your own brand and do your own thing. And I was like, oh, well, then I shouldn't be Sci-Viving SJ. That's not my brand. That's not my book, right? Like, I'm doing this because I appreciate the work and I really enjoy what it is, but I need my own brand. So that's where AWildSJ came from. That's how I decided to stop with Sci-Viving SJ and really like look. And I wish I could remember how this name came about, because I'm not going to lie to y'all. I've never played Pokemon. I've never collected a Pokemon card. I did play Pokemon Go once or twice, but that's it. And it is a Pokemon reference, but what I'm trying to get to is he mentioned how if you put a number or a letter that starts at the beginning of the alphabet, your name's going to show up sooner in all of the searches. So for like a great example is go to the Pulse Tube. If y'all go to the pulsetube.com, right there, front page every time, because it's AWildSJ. So I have Richard to thank for that, you know?
That's freaking amazing. So it seems like that, from the way to understand how you came across Hex and how you came across Richard, it seems like you were convinced about Hex way before, like you said, right? 6 months, way before you were convinced about Richard, which is actually, it seems like to me, like kind of opposite in how a lot of people come into the space, right? Because I guess I can speak for me personally, is that what really sold me when it came to Hex was Richard, right? Because Richard is exactly the type of person, the type of personality that I just tended to gravitate to, right? He's very establishment. Obviously, he's highly intelligent, right? But he had that entrepreneurial spirit that was like, okay, self-made man. He's not just talking the talk; he's walked the walk. Made his millions, rumored billionaire, right? And retired like long ago. And so it was Richard that really sold me into the project. So what I actually want to know from you, SJ, because you said that your experience is kind of opposite, right? Like when you started reading Sci-Vive, what was it like? What were some of the things that you read through Sci-Vive that really sold you on Richard? And it kind of solidified you within the space as a whole.
That's a great question. I think it was there were a few different things. One of the first thing that comes to mind is his vocabulary. And that's kind of, I think it's kind of it might be a strange answer, but I told you that I love learning. And after learning all I did about Hex and, just really wrapping my mind around crypto in general through the Hex, the Richard Heart ecosystem, getting then to open my mind even more and learn new words, learn about inventors I'd never heard of, learn about all these savants and just brilliant people and ideals and laws. I was just so blown away by the brilliance in it that I was just like, oh my God, it feels so good to be learning again and to really have my mind being expanded in ways that I hadn't done that in years. I hadn't felt like I was being challenged or that things that I had, thought that I knew for years, I started questioning different things, even about myself and the things that I believed about myself. Oh gosh, let me think. The business, like his business sense, right? Just the way that he talks about how important it is to, going through sales, right? Like, I think he might still, use, and here's the thing. When I was doing Sci-Vive, so to expand on my work a little bit, I did both audiobooks between the first and second. I did both versions of the audiobook, right? The first version and the second version, that's much better. The second version is not just better quality. I edited the book. So I went through and made sentences make sense. I finished ideas that he hadn't finished. I made sure that things that were not his words were quoted correctly and that everything was sourced and referenced correctly. Things that needed to be put from one chapter into a different chapter, it was moved around. So what you see in Sci-Vive, like t.me/Sci-Vive, what you see posted there is the original-ish version that he had someone else try and help edit. And you'll see that it's just a mess. But so there's a much better edited version. And just like the business sense that he has, the way that I think there was a lot of positivity in it. Like, that's huge. I am the self-proclaimed positivity princess. Like, for someone of that magnitude to be so smart and to also be so about action, it just made sense to me. Like, it was just like, yeah, you can think these things. And look, I've read The Secret and Think and Grow Rich, and a lot of different books that kind of give you this, yeah, it's a mental thing. You have to envision it. And yeah, that's a good way to start. But I think that Richard, just in Sci-Vive, he drives home the point that you must take action. That there's nothing can happen unless you're moving forward and you are taking steps to attain your goals. So, and that's part of what I said, why I say it changed my life, because I started to really think about, okay, what can I do? What can I do? No more like what do I want, or like, what can I envision, or, what can I do? What step can I take right now to move myself forward to attain the goals that I want in life? And I mean, that those couple things alone, just like the his brilliance, his business sense, the positivity, and just the driving home of really telling people that they should take action, I think are some of the biggest takeaways that I had from SciVive, and why it's also why I do the quotes, because and I'm super, like, I'm so glad. I had no idea that Richard was gonna just, like, not be as active and not do what he used to do in terms of streaming and things like that. So I started doing these quotes over a year ago, and he was still kind of doing his thing and streaming here and there, but maybe not, honestly. But I wasn't thinking about that at the time. But nowadays I'm like, well, I have to do this, right? Like, people miss Richard. People want to hear Richard. People want to be reminded of the things that he has said over and over again. And that's, why I'm so glad that I took on this additional project of doing the 369 SciVive quotes, because it's important, I think, for people to remember that his words haven't changed. And sorry, I was actually, let me circle back to this, because I was going to say this earlier. When I was doing all this editing and working on SciVive, this isn't like, I've not had more than like, a few words from Richard, over the course of these years. But one thing that I do know is that every time I asked him if he would change something, I was like, do you still think this way? Do you still believe this? Is this still correct? He never wanted to change anything. So he still very much stands by his words and believes what he believes, and that's, again, like, why I'm so steadfast in continuing to do the SciVive quotes, regardless of, any critique or, whatever it is I get. I'm just like, like, they're not my words, first of all, they're Richard's words. Like, you can, be jerks about it all you want, which I get that sometimes, but I think it's good for people to be reminded of the good things that he has said and how he wants to affect the world and change lives.
One of the things that you had mentioned earlier on in there is that you liked the way that he spoke, and that it was very business sounding and very, very like professional and stuff. I was curious, perhaps but it sounds like every time I've listened to SciVive, because I've never actually read it myself, it sounds like he didn't actually sit there with a pen and paper and write it out. It sounds like he spoke to a voice recorder, and then the voice recorder just like transcribed everything, and maybe threw in some incorrect punctuation or something here and there. But do you have any insight? Did he actually sit down and write it out, or was he like sitting there and talking it out? Because another thing actually is, I was listening to it with a buddy of mine, and he was like, dude, I love this book. This dude's like swearing up and down, left and right inside of this thing, and talking to like the listener like he's their bro or something. Like, do you have any insight on that?
So what I know is that yes and no, there's both. So from what I understand, there were conversations. I don't think it was just him narrating to an AI tool or anything like that. But like, it's a combination of like maybe something like that, having conversations with like another person, and then also just writings. Like, it was like an amalgamation of multiple things in that manner. And then it's interesting. It's funny. It makes me laugh, the part about him cussing and things like that, because I took it upon myself to remove the cussing. He didn't say no to that. In fact, I think if I remember correctly, I mentioned it, and I was like, hey, like, like, do you want to keep this in? Like, what should we do about this? Like, I recommended that we remove it because I wanted it to appeal to a larger audience. And he was like, that's probably a good idea. So the newly edited version is family friendly. Just so you all know.
So one of the things that I really love about what you just spoke about there is that one of the things that made me also gravitate to Richard was that he was this kind of like disgustingly optimistic person, right? And I am very much the same way, right? And one of the things that I always get from folks is that how could you, like, because you know how those people are just optimistic, but they're ignorant in their optimism. right?
Yeah.
But that's not how I saw Richard.
No.
Right? And that's not what I understood from his message. Richard, to me, seems optimistic in the human potential, right?
Yes.
And that's why Sci-Vive, and when he speaks on YouTube, he talks about taking action, like you mentioned, right? And so that's one of the things that I really love about him, is because he's positive and he's optimistic about the human potential. And it's one of the primary reasons why I think he wrote the book, right? Because he wanted to get that message across to the rest of the world, right? Can you give me some insight on that? Do you agree? Is that something that you think that he was trying to get across as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to take that to another level, or from what I've read and what I understand in Sci-Vive, it's not just human potential. And it's interesting because this is a little, what's the word I'm looking for? This can maybe ruffle some feathers, right? Because
ruffle away.
Because he states that not all lives are equal. And he says that in kind of different ways, right? Because if you think about it, if you have like your sister standing there, let's say you're friends with your sister and you like your sister, and there's a stranger standing next to your sister, and you can only save one of them from some bus, some terrible freaking accident, right? Well, those people's lives are not equal to you.
Mm-hmm.
More likely than not, you're going to save your sister, right? So in that vein, he also speaks to the fact that there are people out there that are doing good, that are brilliant, that want to see the world change for the better, much like he does. Now, that kind of life to him, at least from what I understand, is not equal to someone who's, addicted to drugs and on the street and not doing things to help society or themselves in any way, shape, or form. Now, what the point he kind of gets to is that, wouldn't it be great if we could extend the lives of those who are hoping and wanting and working and taking action to make the world a better place, right? That's where the longevity part comes in, is he sees longevity science as a way for us to improve the health, to increase the health span, the lifespan in a healthy manner of people who are brilliant and who want to see better, bigger, more brilliant things happen in the world. There's a quote in there, and I don't know it by heart, but it's basically something to the extent of, wouldn't it be great if Einstein and Tesla and, name your, brilliant genius, were still alive and were able to work together to do more and to change things and to, continue the work that they had started. Like, wouldn't that be grand? So yeah, I think that it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Because yes, there's the positivity of wanting these brilliant minds to move forward, but there's also, and then do we care about these other people? Not so much. Like, it's, that's why I'm saying that it could ruffle feathers a little bit.
Well, see, what I would say about that is it's opportunity, right? So with what he's describing, is not necessarily as like one human being is better than another, right? What he's saying is one human being has created something or become something more than just being human, right? That's what I'm kind of taking out of that. And I would believe, people not being equal and all that, all humans are equal at the beginning. And then things start happening after that. Sometimes, right away you get maybe like a disease or something. You're no longer equal, are you? But you're always starting with that potential. And it's how you use that potential, how you become the best version of yourself, that you then become unequal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't disagree, right? I think it's a pragmatic way of viewing the world. And it's, you can't be all equal and be a special snowflake at the same time,
Mhm.
right? And I think that the reason why there's such a heavy focus on his part, right? I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that Richard puts his money where his mouth is, because
Yep.
he spoke about the longevity aspect in SciVive, and then he donated millions of dollars to longevity research, right?
Yeah.
And so, what I really like about that is because, look, if yes, it's true that not everybody is created equal, right? There's a pragmatism to that. However, I think if you focus on the longevity aspect, right, and you take all of the lessons in SciVive to heart, right, and you can become the best version of yourself that you could possibly be. Then, even though you are inherently selfish, right, and you do care about your sister more than the other person, right, uh, if you put yourself in a position where you're able to achieve the highest amount of success and you live the longest, then you're of considerable value to everybody else in society, right? Right. It's like it bleeds downwards from you. And so even if you're selfish to a degree, like it could be your knowledge, it could be your product, it could just be your message that benefits everybody else, right? Even though we are inherently selfish, and that yes, I would care about my sister more than the stranger on the street if I had to choose between who I had to save between the two.
And the thing about that too, Jay, here, this SJ is probably my favorite thing, and why I fell in love with, Hex, Pulse Chain, and all that. With the way that Richard Hart has set everything up is for everyone to go out and do something, right? We need to take on our own responsibility and, become. So the Hexicans, Pulsicans, Pulse Exicans, we all go out, and if we can't get on, like, say, some centralized exchange or whatever, we create our own. And that's the big thing. Everyone is always innovating and creating our own thing here on Pulse Chain. That's what I absolutely love about this entire ecosystem.
Okay, so since we're on this topic already, SJ, I know that you spend a lot of time, and like the longevity aspect has really interested you. Could you give us a little bit of an insight into the type of different ideas that you've started to explore in terms of longevity and in like increasing the quality of life for humans in general, right? Like what aspects of that has interested you the most, and like what are some things that you might be able to share with us for anybody who's looking into that aspect?
So, man, that it's really been a cool journey learning about longevity, because really at first I thought, oh, this is some, crazy new science. Like, there's a bunch of, there's this guy that goes by Zero. And I think when people think about longevity, a lot of people think of someone like him, where he is just doing all these crazy experiments. He's got tons of money to, just kind of do, like, buy the newest technology and have the latest tests and do all these different things with his body to figure out, how to age backwards, basically. That's a part of it. But really, to me, and I think to what longevity really speaks to, is just extending your health span, extending your lifespan in a healthy manner. And one person that's a great resource for this, who is a Hexican and part of our community, his name is Brent Nally. And he is just a stand-up guy, super awesome dude. He's got his own thing. He's got his own company. And of course, people also know Aubrey de Grey, which is when Richard raised that $27 million for charity. Aubrey was head of the Sense Foundation, who he's no longer with Sense, but they are still, doing longevity. He's got his own foundation now. I think it's called the Leaf Foundation. I can't think of what that stands for right now. But basically, there are a lot of different there's a whole lot that goes into longevity because it's everything. It's your entire existence, right? Like if you want to extend your health span, you're not just going to eat something or sleep better or exercise well. It's all of that and more. So I think that it's really, it's so cool to me how much that our, like crypto kind of in general, but specifically hexagons, right? Like hexagons and longevity people have a lot in common. Like we are staked for 15 years, y'all. Like you want to see
degree of overlap there.
Exactly. Like you want to see those stakes come to fruition. You're going to want to live longer. You're going to want to extend your lifespan and be healthy to be able to see your finances grow, to see that generational wealth come to fruition. You're going to need to take care of yourself and to do well with, you know, the meat like package that you've been given. You have to be able to take care of this so that you can take care of your finances in the future. And there's so much that you could go into and look into. There's all these different supplements you can take. There's different things like ice baths and cryotherapy, and you know, the list goes on and on and on. But what I think the best thing to do if you want to start really learning about how to extend your lifespan and how to live longer, healthier, look up Brent Nally, Aubrey de Grey, David Sinclair. There's a whole gamut of people out there, and they do have differing opinions. Not everyone in the longevity science field believes the same things. Some people think, you know, there's a certain supplement that you can take that's going to help you, and some other people might say that that's not the best thing to do. Like I was fortunate enough to I attended a longevity conference in the days preceding our Pulse Chain Tour event in New York. I got to see Aubrey de Grey there, and I got to see him speak. That's where I met him for the first time. And there were experts there who disagree. Like David Sinclair's a huge name in the longevity world. And I listened to several people who are experts in their field disagree with things that David has said. A lot of them stating that it's because he's kind of he's a businessman before anything else. So he might be trying to make a buck on a different supplement or two, right? So he's going to show you these studies that are going to shed light on maybe a supplement that is in something that he's selling, right? And that's everywhere, right? Like that happens all over the place. So again, like crypto, DYOR, do your own research, learn what it is. And we're not all the same. Now, I don't think that everyone's body is going to accept all of the different, supplements or diets or different ways to extend your health span are probably going to be different for different people. And on top of, just biological differences in general, male and female. Now, that's where I want to really dig into. When I went to that longevity conference, I got to see this woman speak. And I would, if you guys get a chance, check out Athena Tao. Athena, like the goddess, Tao, like a Tao. And they're doing some really, really cool stuff. And I didn't even know about this term until I went to this conference. We're in DeFi, right? Decentralized finance. Y'all know there's DeSci, decentralized science. So these scientists are out here trying to work within the world of crypto and have a DAO, and they have a token, and they're doing these different things to get more interest in the world of longevity. And the Athena DAO specifically for female longevity, which is of the, I saw this chart at that conference, right? And it's like, I can't off the top of my head think of it, but there was like, let's say 8 or 9 different bars, right? Like on a graph of how much funding is going into these various types of longevity studies. And at the very end, there was pets and then women's funding. There's more money going into longevity for pets than there is longevity for women. How y'all gonna keep this whole thing going if all the women are dead? Someone tell me that much. So I've gotten like into kind of this group with those women. I'm super interested in what they're doing, and that's when I have the time and when I'm able to dig deeper into that. I actually had a great conversation with Aubrey de Grey's wife, who is also into longevity studies and for women in particular. And she's a doctor as well. So just super cool things going on there that I think that's actually going to be a little bit of what you'll see from me, I'm hoping, in the future. Like as I move out of SciVibe and as I move out of, not necessarily, I'm not going to leave Hex ever, but as I grow, my own brand and what it is that I want to do and be about, I can definitely see myself being someone who wants to bring more attention to longevity for women, fertility, things like that, right? Like as we grow older, and I had a great conversation with Aubrey about this on RH Max's stream. Max had Aubrey de Grey on, and I was like, I'm a little older and I still want to have children. Like what does that look like, for women in the future who, if we're going to be living longer, can women have children at an older age? And he was like, absolutely, yes. He was like, the womb is an organ like any other organ. I don't see why you wouldn't be able to utilize the science and the, what's the word? The procedures, right? Because there are already things you can do to restore your kidney or your liver. So you should be able to do that for your birthing, your reproductive system as well. So that was really exciting for me. I'm just like, cool, I'm going to live to like 140 and have at least like 20 kids. Like I'm about it. I'm going to populate Hexaco like all on my own. It's going to be great.
I would have some good news. I do have some good news for you, SJ, because so you brought up the point of there's a significant discrepancy in the funding for longevity research for men and women, right? And I think a lot of that had to do with because in like 50 years, 100 years ago, the primary population with advancing education, right? It was primarily men, right? Because women usually stayed home and they took care of the household and the family. And so when that research was still in its infancy, and to a degree it's still in its infancy, right? All of the volunteers that they could get, they were all male, right? And so all of the funding like went to a male-centered population. But now because the universities, especially I've noticed within the health field in general, that more and more women are starting to dominate within the health fields, right? There's a significant higher participation of women within the health centered fields than men. And so I think in the future, yes, you're definitely going to get a much larger portion of funding for longevity research for women. So I think you living to 140, having 20 kids populating Hexaco, I think that's not a pipe dream.
Excellent. I'm about it.
Will and Venus. Go ahead.
I was going to say there's a book by Robert Heinlein. I think it's called The Story of Lazarus Long. I'm looking it up right now, but have you ever heard of that? Oh no, Methuselah's Children. That's the name of the short story by Robert Heinlein. It talks about, it plays it does a little, what is it called? Thought experiment about like, what if certain types of people that all just like were genetically inclined to live longer all got together and they all just like met with other genetically predisposed long living people, and they all like had their own little community and they lived among us nowadays. And it's a very interesting book. Has anyone here on the panel read that? No, probably not.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if anyone is interested, that's a very good book. It's a short story by Robert Heinlein. Very fantastic. I highly recommend it. It goes through a lot of issues that would come up with certain people living longer than other people, and the way that societies might respond to such things. It's obviously a work of fiction. Robert Heinlein, I think he wrote it in the 60s or the 70s, but he's a fantastic author, fantastic book. Highly recommend.
Hey, book club. Got that, Zenith?
I mean, it has nothing to do with crypto or money, but it's a fun longevity topic anyways.
Yes. I was gonna say, Will, even though it's a work of fiction, fantastic writers often write a lot of truth in their fictional work. So
Mhm.
yeah, right. So Zenith, did you have a question or a comment for SJ?
Yeah, I was going to say the whole concept of longevity studies is very interesting. And you were talking earlier about how some of the professionals even have disagreement. I'm going to try to connect this back to our favorite book, Sci-Vive here, which is that Richard tries to answer what is the meaning of life, but he instead kind of flips the question and says that it's the wrong question. What you're really asking is, or rather the answer to that question is, quality times time is how you calculate how much life is worth. And the idea of that is like, sure, you can extend a lifespan, but if the quality of that life in that expanded duration, it's not going to add that much.
Mhm.
Versus, are you worried about living longer or are you worried about living better for longer? I guess the easiest example I can give for people is that if you're a young guy and you hit weightlifting really hard, you can walk around as a big dude for a long time until you're like 40, 50 even. But what that's going to do to your body if you don't do it right is it's going to destroy your ligaments. Sure, you're working out and you're being very healthy, but you might be in a wheelchair by the time you're 55. It's
Right.
just, it's again, that quality versus time thing. So Hex is obviously a tool that incentivizes people to do those Quattro Cinco stakes, stake it out as long as you can so you can stick around for as long as you can. But you also got to ask yourself, like, how am I going to be feeling when I'm that old? What am I going to be doing? What's life look like? I mean, unfortunately, Alzheimer's is a real thing and dementia kicks in, and it's like some days you might not even remember who you are. I don't know. What do you think? Where do you think the focus on longevity studies is? Is it just extending that age number, or is it trying to make it better to the finish line?
So from people, especially like Brent that I mentioned earlier, Brent and Allie, that I remember listening to. I went back because he was one of the first people that I found out about that was in the community that was very much into longevity. And over a year ago now, I had him on my channel. He was like one of the first people I got to talk to about longevity just in general and ask some basic questions. And I reviewed that stream recently because I had him on my channel again. And in that first stream with him, I remember like basically I took this note. Let me see. I'm going to try and find it real quick, actually. Longevity. And I basically just took the gist of like what he was saying and dumbed it. Like when it comes down to it, long answer, like short, is it is about extending your health span. And Richard mentions that in Sci-Vive. Aubrey de Grey will mention that when you talk to him. And I think the smartest people in the space are going to be telling you that same answer, because why extend the number if you're going to, because that's an argument that a lot of people against longevity, or that think they're against longevity, have, right? That's a misconception of longevity, is that all you're doing is becoming more and more decrepit. And there's I can't think of the name right now, but there's some Greek or fable story that talks about someone who asked for eternal life. Now, so he lived forever, but becoming more and more frail as time went on, right? He didn't have eternal youth, he had eternal life.
Oh, absolutely. I think this is even a common trope in some literature that you see, is it's the idea of a person meets an immortal being and they're like, wow, this must be fantastic to live forever. And then the more that you dig into that character, you start to realize that their one true wish in life is to finally die.
Yes.
Because sometimes the authors try to recreate the idea that the thing that gives life meaning is that it is finite, is that there's an end to it. And because there is an end, everything before it matters to that point. Mm-hmm. Because if something goes on forever, you could sit there and do nothing. And honestly, it might be rather similar to as if you're doing as much as you possibly could. I think one of the most recent examples of this was the movie The Island. It's the one where there's all these people that are like grown in a lab, and then two people escape just to discover that the entire reason that lab exists is that rich people pay to have clones that they harvest for organs later on. And eventually it's just like, it's like the idea of you drive this really old car, you keep it going just by keep swapping out parts until you kind of figure how much of me is actually me versus just aftermarket clone. I don't know. It's the weird
one of the things that you had mentioned there, Zenith, that I kind of want to touch on is you talking about life being finite is sort of what makes it like I suppose valuable, for lack of a better term. And it just reminds me of like, oh, things that are deflation or things that are inflationary generally have a little bit less value than things that are deflationary. Scarcity creates value. So if you live forever, right, then you have an abundance of time. Then time is of less like perspective wise value from whoever the person. So that just made me think of like, oh, like comparing Zen to like Bitcoin or something like that. So that was just a little fun thought I was having there.
Yeah, man. It's like that's one of the cool things about the RH community in general, right? Because everybody obviously thinks of Hex and Pulse Chain, Pulse X. They think of that as financial products, right? But because they don't really know Richard before Hex, right? They haven't dug into his past with Sci-Vive and 15 Ways to Fix the World, right? And so the person who's actually gone that far back and looked through his work beforehand notice that Hex is more than just a financial product, right? Because you have all these other different aspects built into it. SJ and the panel has already kind of alluded to this, in that the person who stakes Quattro Cinco now has an incentive to be able to see that stake through, right? And because of that, the community as a whole, right, has now have a focus on not just seeing that through, but creating camaraderie and unity around that concept, right? So you're creating all like you're within Hex, you're able to address all of these other aspects of longevity, right? For one thing, like look at Matty Allen, right? A lot of his content focuses on like the mental health aspect, the emotional health aspect, surrounding people's lives, right? And not just the financial aspect that Hex provides, right? And that the RH ecosystem provides. And so within this one product, right, you've now created a community that addresses all of these other different aspects of health, right? You're addressing the financial, you're addressing emotional, mental, and you've got the social aspects, right? The social health. And so it's kind of like this all-encompassing thing when other people think that it's just initially that it's just a financial product, when it's really able to address all of these different aspects as well, right? Which is what's really cool about it. SJ, you mentioned the Pulse Chain tour a little bit earlier, so I do want to dive deeper into that. So you are one of you're one of the people who's spearheading this tour, right? And one of your tags is the bus life, right? So can you tell us a little bit about the experience of, well, you're basically a traveling nomad, right? Which a lot of people would say that's actually the dream. What has been your experience being on the road for, I'm guessing since you sold your house in Austin, that you've been on the road since that time. So what's been the experience like being a traveling nomad, helping promote Richard Hart and his products, and being able to interface with the community, not just online like this, but like physical, right? Physical interfacing, right? Can you give us a little bit of insight into your experience in that life?
Yeah, absolutely. So that whole dream, I mean, I actually wouldn't say it like it was a dream for me. It just, I've always been a very nomadic kind of person. Even when I had my home, there was a good chunk of time that I didn't live in it because I was working a job where I traveled all the time. And I basically lived out of my car. Like I had a house, which I just was so busy with this other job traveling around the United States, staying in hotels and sometimes staying in my car. Like I actually had a really cool setup. I had this Hyundai Elantra hatchback, and it fit a twin size mattress in the back of it. And I've just always been kind of comfortable with that life. In fact, my mom tells me this story that when I was a baby, the only way they could get me to stop crying was if they would put me in the passenger seat of the car and drive me around. So mobile life is in my blood, apparently. And I knew that after seeing the KSB tour happen, I knew that I wanted to be a part of whatever the next iteration of that was going to be. in between all of that, I had lived in a Sprinter van. I bought and converted a Mercedes Sprinter van into a home on wheels, and with a partner of mine at the time, and we lived in that for a summer. And I've always kind of just enjoyed the idea of that and doing that in one way or another. So I knew that I wanted to be a part of being able to be mobile and promote Hex. Like, I didn't, from between being an actor and doing Sci-Vive, I basically tried, I knew that I wanted to start trying to make a living for myself within this ecosystem. So I started doing shorts for other content creators. I did some vocal work for other content creators. Like, I basically have since then really tried to like find my way to be a part of this and promote anything and everything that I can within our ecosystem that makes sense and, you know, is keeping me kind of afloat in that manner. Now, what ended up happening is that I had a series of unfortunate events, right? My vehicle at the time, I was driving a Mazda 3, and it broke down. And this was like November of last year, of 2022. So around November 2020, around the same, actually like maybe about a year ago, basically, car breaks down. And at the same time, the place that I was living on and off was not going to be available to me any longer. So I needed a place to live and I needed a car to drive. And I thought, well, I should probably get them all in one because that's me anyways. And again, I knew that I wanted to be a part of whatever tour was going to happen, if a tour was going to happen. Like, I had told Black Hexagon, I was like, hey girl, like, if y'all are doing this again, count me in, like, sign me up. I'm going to have a vehicle. I'll be there. So it worked out that the little bit of savings I had left was just enough to purchase the bus that I'm now in. And what ended up happening is, as I transitioned my life into that bus, I started to reach out because I needed work. I started to reach out to different Hexicans again to be like, hey, like, you need shorts done. Like, can I help you with this? Is there anything going on with you that I can be a part of? And RG3 is someone that I had done some work for in the past. It was just a few things I volunteered to do. Like, I helped him write his bio. I helped put a presentation together and a couple other things. And so this time I was like, hey man, like, got any work to do? Got any paid work to do? Like, you know, is there anything that I can do that like will help sustain me and this lifestyle that I'm about to live? And on top of that, like, you know, perpetuate what it is that we believe in, right? Hex and true DeFi. And the timing just couldn't have been better because he said, you know what? Actually, yeah, there is something that I've been thinking about. Let me look into a couple things and I'll get back to you. And within a few days, he ends up, you know, we're on this phone call and he's like, hey, look, I've been thinking about going on tour. And I so strongly believe in Hex and what it's done for me and what Richard Hart is doing that I want to spend my time going out there and teaching people about it and telling people that this is the way. So he and I had that conversation and, you know, he was like, and I need someone to help me run this thing, right? And he knew that I was going to, you know, that I had the bus and I would be able to move equipment, merchandise, you know, whatever it is from one location to another. And that I was more than willing to be the person, you know, the pack mule in a way, like the person that would be able to go from city to city and take care of things and promote, you know, get there early and be the boots on the ground and check out venues and figure out what's going on with everything. Well, after we had that conversation, he said, you know, I need to reach out to Black Hexagon because she's done this before, right? Like, she's the one that kind of ran the KSB tour and she knows how all this works. So let me see if I can get in touch with her and, you know, kind of pick her brain and find out, you know, like if she can be of any help in terms of, you know, teaching us anything. Well, that conversation turned into her, you know, us finding out from her that KSB wasn't going to end up doing the Million Pulse tour at that time, at least not in the States, right? Because they kind of had all scattered a little bit and decided that it wasn't, you know, that all the stuff was going on with the SEC. There was just like a ton of this like FUD happening, right? So just everyone was just like, you know what, they kind of wanted to lay low and, you know, not do it. So come to find out that not only was she not going to be doing, you know, anything with KSB, and she still is, but at the time, like, they weren't going to go on this tour. So RG3 was like, hey, well, do you want to help us out? And Black Hexigon's like, I thought you'd never ask. So the three of us basically have been the core team since that point. And I just couldn't imagine a more solid group of individuals. Like, I'm going to toot my own horn a little there, but like, the three of us work really well as a team. And the fact that all of us are just so passionate about what it is that we do and how we want to perpetuate this into the world, I'm really excited because we're not going to stop. Like, this is just the beginning, and we are absolutely going to continue this tour into the next year. So the coolest thing, one of the coolest things to me is that RG3 was going to do it whether Pulse Chain launched or not. We already had tour dates set and cities picked out without knowing Pulse Chain what was going to happen with it. If it was going to launch or not, he would have continued to do this tour no matter what. So, I mean, that just kind of goes to show you the kind of character, right? And like just the gravity, right? And the belief and the faith that all of us have in this system and in what it can do for people and in what it's going to do. I love it when I hear RG3 say we're going to fill stadiums, because we're absolutely, I have no doubt that we're going to fill stadiums someday. And again, like RG3 says, it might not be him speaking, it might not be us doing this tour, but someday, because we started it here, you know, and, you know, shout out to the KSB team, because like Richard says, we stand on the shoulders of giants. This wouldn't have started if had KSB not done what they had done, you know, maybe it would have come about eventually, but it was a great forerunner, right? They were an amazing team to see what they did and to kind of like pick up the torch and continue to carry that on. And I just can't wait. Like I said, I think that this is going to really just blow people's minds next year. We've already got some really great ideas on getting more community engagement, getting college kids involved. We've got I can't wait until we actually get to like unveil what the next like type, because it's going to still be the Pulse Chain Tour, but this year it was the Pulse Chain Tour, Fix the Money, Fix the World. And next year it's going to be the Pulse Chain Tour, and I can't tell you what the title is yet, but it's going to be so good. And I think it's going to be like a huge hook, and it's going to just bring masses of people, because it's a very good hooky, catchy thing. So I'm over the moon that I get to be a part of it for sure.
Are you guys well, maybe this is a question you can't answer, but are you guys considering taking this tour internationally?
So here's the thing. Yes. But that's only because we are partnering with KSB. So the KSB team, and I hope I'm not like announcing anything that shouldn't be said already. I think this is public news. I'm pretty sure this is already out there, but the KSB TV team is already doing things in Europe. They have things set for the summer of next year. So instead of us just going out and doing our own thing, we're going to join with the KSB team in Europe and just like come alongside them and work with them in Europe for that. And whether or not we, like the three of us as our team goes out, whether or not we deviate from their schedule and like go into other places, I'm not sure yet. We're still kind of working all that out, but it is going to start here. Like our plan right now is to kick it off in Las Vegas. We don't have a set time yet, but we are most likely going to be doing smaller events in the California, Arizona, Nevada area for the first 3 months of the year ish. So like that's the way it's kind of shaping up right now, is we're going to be on the West Coast. We're going to be just like doing little meetups and like maybe having a seminar here and there, just kind of depending, but that's where it's going to start. And then for sure in the summer, we will be going international. Yeah, 100%.
That's absolutely freaking exciting. I wanted to point out, because as SJ mentioned this when she was explaining how the inception of the Pulse Chain Tour, right? And it's a great example of exactly how strong this community is, right? Because I'm not saying this to kind of take shots at the KSB team. Any person who would have said, you know what, there's a lot of regulatory uncertainty. The SEC is coming after Richard. I think it would be intelligent for us to kind of take a step back and lay low, because he's laying low. When RG3 was on stream with us, he was talking about how they sent like 3 subpoenas to him because of his involvement with Hex, because of his involvement with the film. And so it's not like it's unreasonable for anybody to say, okay, I'm going to step back, right? But you have folks like RG, you have folks like like SJ here, who, despite all this FUD, despite all this uncertainty, are still going out there to spread the word of a financial product that they actually do truly believe in, that they believe that they will fix the money and then fix the world, right? And so you say what you want about Richard Hart, say what you want about Hex, you can have your opinions about it, but you can't deny that there isn't a community of people that has rallied around an asset the way that the Hexicans and Pulsicans have rallied around Richard Hart and his products, right? And so what I actually wanted to ask you, SJ, is that you guys have obviously been doing this throughout the bear market, right? And yes, Hex did make new lows this year, and the Pulse chain release kind of created this schism between the community. But you guys are out there on the road meeting people face to face. What has been your experience with Hexicans when you're able to interface with them like physically, and you're actually able to speak with them, interact with them face to face, right? Is everybody giving up like Twitter has told us they are, right? Has Hex been abandoned? Has have they left the RH ecosystem? Is that the case, or are you seeing something different?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm definitely seeing something different. I mean, I think that anyone who would come to one of these events, first of all, right, is not going to be someone who's downtrodden or, bummed out about their bags or worried about the future, right? These are the most diehard Hexican, the fans and, believers that are coming out to these events. Now, I would say on the flip side of that, that's probably a big reason why the turnout has been so low, right? Despite the fact that we are out here doing this, that doesn't mean we're filling stadiums yet, we're barely filling conference rooms right now. So it was disheartening for a little while, especially for me, because I wear my emotions on my sleeve. Like, I'm a very open book kind of person. So there was a good chunk of time where things were just like not going well because the bus kept breaking down, which it kind of continues to do so, but that's a whole other story. And also we weren't selling a lot of tickets at these events. And it was really, it's been hard because this has not been lucrative by any means, right? Like, all of us are doing what we can to get by right now. And bless RG3's heart, because this is all out of his pocket. Like, everything that's happened, all of the venues, like everything that's going on, all the dinners, like all the it's this man is literally like keeping this whole thing afloat right now. And I just, if I don't make any money in Hex, that's fine. But Lord, can this bull market just bless RG3 and bring him an abundance of ridiculous wealth, because he deserves it more than anyone, to be honest with you. Like, to see the work that he's put in for these tiny meetups, right? Like, I think one of our smallest events was probably the Nashville meetup. It was like 10 people. And, it's just like, man, like, where are y'all? Like, where's all this, Hexican pride, and where's all the Pulsicans and Pulsexicans? It's been interesting seeing that, right? But long story short, it's a little bit of both, right? Like, I've seen people that, mostly on like trolls on the internet, like telling us that, this is a waste of time and money. But let me tell y'all, here's the thing. To me, it's not the Hexicans that are coming to these events. It's the new people that have never heard of this before that are coming to these events. And you never know, right? Like and that has happened. Like we don't ask everyone at the door how they heard about the event or where they came from. But as luck would have it, in Atlanta, we happened to, Black Hexican's been doing great work with putting these events out on meetup.com. And in Atlanta, we had like a snafu with one of the tickets, and come to find out that this gentleman purchased his ticket and found out about the event through meetup.com. Not a member of our community, not a Hexican, had never heard about this stuff before. And he walked in the door and walked out a Hexican. You know what I mean? So like, not just like, and that's just one story. Like, and that's just at the events, you guys. Like when I'm out there in this bus, almost every single time I stop at a gas station, I rest at a rest stop, I'm at someone's, I'd use this thing called Harvest Host, where I stop at people's houses and like they allow me to like plug in and use their thing. It's like Airbnb, but for your van, right? So I onboarded one of my hosts into Pulse Chain because he was like, hey, are you still doing this Pulse Chain thing? He happened to have bought some Satama coin like forever ago. And I was like, hey man, did you know that you have a free copy? Like, not only, yes, am I still doing this Pulse Chain thing, but did you know that you have a free copy of that coin on Pulse Chain? So I sat there with him and made sure that he was able to get onto the Pulse Chain with his MetaMask and see his coins. So that's like the coolest thing is this tour is not about the Hexicans to me, right? Like it's about the people that have never heard of this, or, you know, have like a little interest in crypto, and all of a sudden now they're onboarded into our ecosystem because they saw a bus, or they might have heard of Richard Hart, or maybe like I had some guy in the middle of freaking nowhere in Oregon. There was this tiny little town. He comes up, taps on my window, and is like, I sacrificed for PulseX. And I was like, dude, I don't even know where I am right now, but that's awesome. Like it's been the thing of just that's been the most magical part, is just seeing people. Like people will honk at my bus while I'm on the road. I've had people wave Pulse Chain t-shirts out their window to show me, hey, like I'm with you, you know, like that's what's more enchanting and wonderful, and like makes my heart happy, and like helps me to remember, despite all the disheartening stuff that's happened, that this is absolutely worth every penny and every moment that we're all the time and energy and funds that is going into this ridiculous bottom of the bear market tour has been worth it. If just for every single time there's at least one person that gets onboarded every single time. And you never know what kind of ripples that one person is going to make, right? So if that's what's happening in the bottom of a bear market, like I can't even imagine, like my mind is just like blown thinking about what's going to happen in this next year or two.
It's going to be crazy. It's going to be absolutely crazy. I got a question, actually, since you're talking about that. Do you think that Hex is no longer the poster child of the whole RH ecosystem? Do you think Pulse Chain should be the stamp? And then as they come into Pulse Chain, they start finding Hex and PulseX and all these. Do you think that's kind of the direction we're headed right now?
So yes and no. Here's the thing, that like you're kind of hitting it, but it's also like when you come to this event, really Pulse Chain is just kind of the title. But when you come, and if you listen to RG3's speech and what he's talking about, and if you ever listen to that man talk on any stream at any point, you know he is all about Hex. Hex is the GOAT. Hex is better than Bitcoin, right? Like exactly. Hex is better than Bitcoin. And that is for sure where we go with it, right? Like, yeah, we're going to talk about Pulse Chain, and you know, people are interested in that. And we love the fact that people are building on Pulse Chain, and there's all these different, I love another narrative that RG has really started to dig into is the fact that Web3 is coming alive because of Pulse Chain, right? Like all of these Web3 developers have been sitting around waiting for a layer 1 to do what Pulse Chain is going to do or is doing. So now there's so much more utility that can be built on Pulse Chain because it's better than Ethereum, right? So it's so cool to, you know, have these hooks and to have all these different, you know, like NFT communities and, you know, Doge and Shiba, you know, whoever you are, you got your copy, right? You can come to Pulse Chain, but we drive home every time that Hex is the GOAT, you know? So I guess it kind of depends on who we're speaking to and what it is that they're interested in. But for sure, I know that, you know, regardless of the title of, you know, whatever it is that we're going to be talking, or whatever it is that we present to you at first, right? Whatever it's, you know, here's the shiny object, right? But the blue chip, you know, the sure thing always is going to be Hex, for sure.
Very good point there, because so you mentioned about how all of these different developers that were waiting for a platform to launch some of their projects and are using Pulse Chain. You know what it really reminds me of? When Uniswap was still an unknown product, and then the Hexicans came and flooded in and really skyrocketed the amount of transactions that was going on in Uniswap, and that's really what propelled it to the top of the charts. Pulse Chain is doing that for Web3, right? And I think sooner or later, people are going to realize exactly the value. Right? They haven't because we've been gatekept so heavily, they haven't realized it yet. But I guarantee you, once Richard Hart is vindicated in the eyes of the law, that's when all of the naysayers are going away and they can't have anything else to throw at him. And then they'll find out exactly the value that has already existed in this ecosystem for the past 3 years, right? Going on 4. Zenith, you came off of mute. Sorry, I kind of jumped in there, but I just wanted to make that comment.
No, you're good, brother. I was just going to talk about Hex and Pulse Chain and how they all fit together. This is even something that Richard Hart has talked about, which is that Hex is the original invention and that everything has been created to effectively make Hex better. Hex was supposed to work on Bitcoin, but it went to the Ethereum network instead. Then they started having some issues with all the gas fees on the Ethereum network sometimes because it gets so backed up and just so expensive during the bull market. So that's why the creation of Pulse Chain. Again, even if you want to look at one of the other projects going on right now, Fiat, that's actually an acronym for what it is trying to do. It is Pulse and Hex Investor Asset Tools. It is designed to help you do better things with your Pulse and Hex and make better decisions and moves. You can even look at all the other stuffs like Hedron and Icosa that were built on top of the Hex stake idea to help create more value. It honestly is just a community that keeps adding on and on to itself and finding new use cases for existing things and finding ways to iterate in ways that they just haven't found before. But yeah, to get back to it, Hex honestly is the asset itself that is the new idea, although it's not even really a new idea because it's just turning the CD, which is the second most popular thing that your bank offers, they're just turning that into DeFi. So that's where you get that from. And I think that Hex is definitely going to be the thing here to stay because it has all the other external factors that we talked about before, like the idea that you can do a Quattro Cinco stake and now you have something to look forward to in the future. It teaches delayed gratification. It gives you purpose. It gives you things to look forward to. So yeah, Pulse Chain is very cool. Do not get me wrong. It is a fantastic L1 and there's tons of people building on it for good reason, but Hex is the core of all of this. And I think we'd do well to not forget it.
Absolutely. 100%.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that's what people tend to forget, right? That the tools that Richard Hart built were all built to make Hex better. And I think this conversation really shined a light on it because when Pulse Chain got released, it was like the new kid on the block. It was a shiny new toy and everybody kind of lost their way and lost the initial messaging, right? That all of these different things were built to make Hex better. SJ, can you share with us some of your, like maybe 1 or 2 of your most favorite stories out on the road interfacing with Hexicans during the tour, right? You must have some good stories and you must have some like some like character stories.
Man, let me think. All right, so one great story that this brought me to tears. We were in Atlanta. And Atlanta, by far, I think for me, was probably one of the best events there's a place out there called the Atlanta Blockchain Center. And the guy that runs that, Marlon Williams, is just a gem of a human being and is doing amazing things for crypto and for his community there in Atlanta. He's also, he self-proclaimed Pulsican. He said he's more of a Pulsican than a Hexican for sure. But he sacrificed for Pulse. He has Hex as well. And he just is hosting this space where anyone who's working in the Web3 world can come and work, and you have a place there. If you're in Atlanta and you do Web3, look up the Atlanta Blockchain Center. During their time there, this is actually during the VIP dinner after the event, we were all like sitting in this dining area, and I was at one table, and I was just kind of like taking it all in, and I was listening to the conversation at the table to the left of me. And what I heard happen was several gentlemen there who had never met before, who all lived in Atlanta, who were all Hexicans, start to have this conversation. And then as they realized, you know, who they were and where they were from and what was going on, they started the Atlanta Hexican Telegram chat right there at that table. And that to me is one of the most precious, awesome, magical things to have happen, because that's what we want, right? Like that's what decentralization kind of is, right? Is that these people are, you know, everyone is part of a smaller, like we're all a microcosm, right? Like there's the larger community, right? And there's the English speaking community and the Spanish speaking community and the German speaking community. You know what I mean? And then within that, there's your local community. Like, where do you live? Who can you actually go physically meet up with, right? Like, shout out to the Pacific Northwest Hexicans, man. Those guys meet up constantly, and they're like all good friends. And, you know, like they're really doing it out there. They're continuing to build community and grow their community. Same thing in Salt Lake. I've seen them go out and do things, right? Like Fashion Coder and Hex-Ray Vision, right? Like it's just so cool to see people take the lead and to take charge and to want to say, yes, like, you know, we have this thing in common. Let's meet up and talk about it and find out how we can impact and affect those people around us. How can we affect our community? How can we bring this generational type wealth into the places that we live, right? Because that's really what it's about, is growing our community and teaching people, you know, that they can get out of the rat race, that the 9 to 5 doesn't have to be, you know, like that's not the end all be all of our existence. Is, you know, we don't need to go work for someone else. You don't have to do that anymore. You can live your dreams. You can pursue your passions. You can do what you want to do, because there's a tool out there that gives you yield every day while you're sleeping. It's called Hex. Go get you some. Sorry, my rant. Let me think of, so this is, I mean, like, I don't know. There's not too many weird or bad or, you know, stories or anything like that. One thing that I've loved that I've seen is there are two, shout out to our two biggest tour fans. So Robert and Hex Glenn. These dudes have been to more events and meetups than anyone else. I don't know if they're even at this point or if one has been more than the other one, but those two dudes have been to at least 4 or 5 different events all over the nation. Like, they'll just come out and they just want to be a part of it. And I love that, because it's like, you know, I think that a lot of people feel like they can kind of come out of their shell, or they can really be themselves. And like, it's like, we get you, you know, like people who are in crypto, period, I think are a whole different breed of human. Like, I think we really think differently, and like, there's something about that ideal, right? Like, about financial freedom and decentralized finance that just brings a different breed of human. And to have to be able to have conversations with people about it. Because my family doesn't understand this. My best friends from high school have no clue what any of this is. Like, they think that they can buy like Bitcoin on their Robinhood app and they have crypto. And I'm just like, you don't know. Like, they don't understand not your keys, not your coins, right? Like, they're not into it like we are. So, I mean, that's kind of one of the more quirky, beautiful things, is just seeing people who are maybe a little more introverted, or, like maybe don't have the ability to have these conversations with people in their own social circles, come to these events and get to hang out with us and have the conversations like that. There's nothing like it. I think it's beautiful seeing community in real time, like seeing it happen in front of my face, like constantly. I love it. Like, and I'm total extrovert. Like, I am a people person. I love just being around humans, and it's every now and then it gets a little draining, which is weird for me because I'm normally like, I get energized by being around other people. But this has definitely been a lot. Like, it's been, I mean, going to event after every 2 weeks, there's some event, there's something going on, but I wouldn't change it for the world. And I just wanted to really put out the call that, like, hey, like, we're out here. Like, if you are looking for community, if you just want to have someone to talk to, like, my DMs are open. Come hang out with us. The event is like, we're having an Austin event on the 4th of November. Like, come to Austin. People have driven from 6 to 8 hours away to come to these events. So you got no excuse. Come hang out. It's going to be great.
Will, if you're speaking, brother, your mic is not working because you're not muted, but we can't hear you.
How's that? Can you hear me now?
There we go.
All right. Excellent. Yeah, I hit my headset. Man, you talking about the Pacific Northwest Hexicans, like, brings like a small tear to my heart. I had to leave. I was living up in the Seattle area at the time that you guys were doing the Portland meetup. I had to leave like for Nashville that day that the Portland meetup was happening. Me and my brother were on our way driving down to the Pulse Tour event over in Portland when we got the call from our boss. He's like, hey, I need you in Nashville on Monday. And we're like, and so we had to skip out on that one. But man, what this is kind of just a selfish question for me, and I guess anyone else who is from the Pacific Northwest, what goes on with the Pacific Northwest Hexicans? Where can I find them?
So check out Telegram. Hit up RH Max or Balliet Brand, or those are probably the two. Max is probably going to be one of the easiest people to get a hold of.
Okay.
He's pretty active on all the socials. So yeah, hit up either of those two guys and just ask for an invite into the Telegram. And I know that they are constantly out there just having, like, they might even meet weekly or bi-weekly or something like that. Like, they're just always hanging out and doing stuff. And I mean, Brand's family alone, I actually I've met Brand in person. I didn't get to hang out with him when we were up there this last time, which broke my heart a little bit. And shout out to Balliet Brand, happy birthday. I think his birthday was just yesterday or today. So, but I met his brothers and I got to hang out with them, and like just them alone, right? Like, they're kind of like their own little like Hexican clan. So, they're always hanging out and doing stuff, and just inviting other people to do it. So and shout out to Julie too. Julie's up in the Pacific Northwest. She flew out all the way to Miami. Man, that woman, I'm going to tell y'all, this is what I wanted to make this like an exclusive on my channel, because I do the Women Crush Wednesday thing. And I haven't in a while, and I wanted to bring her on and have her tell the story herself. But I just have to throw the story out there, because it's probably one of the most phenomenal Hexican onboarding stories I've ever heard. And I'm not gonna tell it as well as she would, or even Black Hexican, because they both were at this event and I wasn't. Basically, for the Pulse Chain Tour, there was a pool party at one of the hotels. And I think it was CZ Hexing threw a pool party. And this woman, Julie, was out in Vegas just kind of doing her thing. She went to the pool at her hotel, and it was just like, or maybe the pool was closed at her hotel. So she decides to go over to Resort World, which is where CZ was having her pool party. And Julie goes to one of the pools out there, and like it's just full of kids, and she's like, this is not my vibe. Like, where else can I go? Like, she asks some staff member. They're like, well, they're having a private event over here, but like, you know, you can kind of be in that area or whatever. So Julie goes over to the private event area in this pool and sees this pool party happening. And I can't remember who it was, but some Hexican is like messing around in the pool and being all silly and rambunctious, and accidentally like literally falls on top of her. And this person, he's like, the story that I overheard was like, he's just a sweetheart. He's a super nice person. He's like, oh, I'm so sorry. No. And then starts telling her what they're doing and what's going on here. Through that interaction, she became a Hexican, and she's like a full-blooded Hexican. Like, Julie comes out to our, like, she's also been to several Pulse Chain Tour events. She was on the cruise that they did going out to, where did we go? To the Bahamas. And that's, I think, where I met her for the first time. But yeah, she's also a Pacific Northwest Hexican. And like, just what, like, again, like, you never know what these little events and these little things that we do, when we come together in real life, people notice and people see it. And, you know, like, I'm so glad that I'm a part of that and that I get to perpetuate that into the future.
SJ, would you say that there in the Hex community space, like, is there a gap in some sort of like map of Hexicans in places, like some sort of website or meetup center or Telegram chat room where people can all hop in to be like, hey, I'm here in Atlanta. Like, obviously the Atlanta guys created their thing, the Pacific Northwest guys created their thing. I'm thinking just from like an entrepreneurial spirit here, like, is this something that is possible for a Hexican to create, or is there something that already exists in that fashion? Is this something that you guys and RG3 are all working on, or is this just kind of something that that hasn't been made yet?
Go build it, bro. That's great idea.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I think
I don't know of anything like that, but that's brilliant, because that would, I think that would be so helpful to people that don't know. I mean, like, I think there's people that don't even know that they have a Telegram for whatever region it is that they're in, right? Like, of course, the bigger ones, it's easy to find, or people will talk about it, right? Like Texas, California. Yeah, of course, like they have their Telegram groups, right? But like, there might be a Boise Telegram group, but I mean, I'm not from Boise, but you know what I mean? Like, there's several Hexicans out there as well. And I think that's a great idea. So
that's what I'm thinking. I got a website developer I know, so I might hire him to build me a website so that way Hexicans can find each other. You guys are hearing it here first.
Yes.
We're doing it live. I'm going to build a thing for Hexicans to meet up. And I travel to the States too, similar to you. I'm a little bit more industrial for reasoning. Like, I don't travel because I want to. I travel because I have to.
Gotcha.
But like, but yeah, I'm always hopping around the States. Been doing that for like the last 4 years or so, and it's just like it's really cool to meet up with people from like military past or cryptocurrency events, or just like people all around the country. You know, I've interviewed. That's actually how me and Zenith met. You know, I met Zenith at the crypto mindset meetup that Miguel and Charlie were throwing for the whatever the year was. I think, oh yeah, it was the beginning. It was earlier this year. When did that happen, Zenith? I don't freaking remember.
Early August, we were in Vegas for it, for the crypto mindset meetup.
Yeah.
I was going to say, similar to something you were talking about earlier, SJ, which is that it feels like a lot of the meetups right now, everyone's talking about like, yeah, this is smaller right now. That's just because it's a bear market. But still at the same time, like, all the magic is still there. Yeah. Everyone's just like ready. We're all committed, and we're just waiting for the good times to start rolling. And I'm sure once people's wallets start filling up, it's the turnout is going to start increasing as well. But to go off something you said earlier, you said bless RG3's heart for kind of doing this out of pocket. Yeah. Like, obviously, yes, bless the man's heart because he's committed to this community. But unlike a lot of the trolls that you guys get saying that, why are you doing this? This is pointless. I think RG3 sees the vision. And the reason that he's doing it is it's just laying the foundation. He's doing the hard work now, setting it up so that when the good times do start rolling, it's there, it's ready. People know what it is and they trust it, and they're ready to come hang out and party.
He's really got this dialed in. He's a great.
It's the vision.
He's a great guy.
He has the vision, and when you hear him talk, it's the conviction behind it. Mm-hmm. It's that he himself is an RH Maxi, and then when he came on our channel, it was fantastic because when he talks about this thing, you can tell that he really genuinely believes it, and that he's committed to the cause, and he's doing it to try to help everybody just get in this together so that we can make the most out of it.
Dude, he's a priest, man. He's a pastor. Yeah. That's his thing.
Yeah.
Like when people are convicted on it, so like he's a good salesman and he believes in the thing that he's selling, and the thing that he's selling is like legitimately awesome, you know. And then he also has the oratory skills, like he's a fantastic talker, and just the it's all of this fantastic little package that is the Captain RG3.
Yeah.
Wherever he got it all from. Yeah, exactly.
No, absolutely. And I like Zenith was talking about, right? He has this vision, right? And so one of my favorite quotes from him is that he said that whatever we have to do, whether if we start from hotel rooms, then we start at hotel rooms, and then we start at convention centers, and then like you said, SJ, right, we move on to stadiums, right? So the way that RG sees things, he doesn't really, even if it's only 10 people attending one of the events, like for him, the 10 people is a lot more than what people think, right? One of my favorite Jordan Peterson quotes is, he says, "You're one personal interaction away from 1,000,000 and 2 interactions away from 1,000,000,000, right? That's how closely connected you are to everybody else in the world, and how 1 or 2 interactions can be a ripple effect to everybody else around you." And you know, the folks that SJ talked about, like the Julies, right? Like the Roberts, like as he said, it was Hex Glenn, right? Who are very excited and overzealous to talk Hex and Richard Hart to everybody else. Those are the kind of people that you need, right? Because if you ask any one of those people, sell me on Hex, they can sell you on Hex. You can't necessarily say that about a lot of other projects in the crypto space,
Right.
Because if you ask anybody, hey man, sell me on Chainlink, you're not gonna have the type of community that Hex has. Even though Chainlink is a good project, right? But you don't have the type of community and the kind of like fervor within the Chainlink community that you find within the Hex and the RH ecosystem community, right? And I think that's precisely what sets it apart.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off there, Jay.
I don't peruse 4chan. There's
Dude,
too much degeneracy going on there even for me.
Bro, 4chan is the Chainlink community. I just recently found this out like earlier. Like that's where Chainlink came from. It's all like the business board of 4chan. I've been like cruising 4chan for the last 10 years, man. I had no idea that Chainlink was on there. Dude, that blew my mind. That shit was crazy.
No way.
Yeah, man.
I was gonna say, Jay, just try telling someone to explain Chainlink to somebody. It's hard to do, but something like Hex, it's pretty easy. It's just like, hey, do you like more money? Do you like delayed gratification? Cool, here you go.
Bro, can you imagine? All right, here's my pitch of Chainlink, right? It's all about that CCI.
Here we go.
So let me tell you about cross-chain interoperability protocols. You know, it's like that pitch is not as easy to pitch as something like Hex, right? It's not as attractive. But I digress. SJ, we do want to be respectful of your time. So on behalf of the Degenerate Roundtable community and our audience, we do want to thank you so much for coming on and entertaining us for like almost 2 hours here. Can you please tell everybody where they can find you, what else you have planned over the horizon, and any last message that you might have for the people who are still kind of down in the dumps, that we're not at $5 Hex yet. Can you give them some words of encouragement?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. We're just getting started, y'all. If being on this tour has taught me or shown me anything, it's that we are the ones who are going to see something really revolutionary happen. I strongly believe that this is part of what I was born to do. I've never felt more full of purpose and just joy in what it is that I'm doing ever in my life. I talk on my channel every now and then about the fact that I was an actress and I didn't want to be, I turned down commercials because I didn't want my likeness to be associated with things that I don't believe in. And I believe so much in all of this, in Hex, in what Richard has done, in what Richard is doing. And I'm telling y'all, we will fill stadiums. Your neighbors will know Hex, people will know who Richard Hart is. I have no doubt about that. So hold tight. Know that this is just the beginning and that virality is on its way. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind about that. I've never been more sure about anything in my life. So firstly, there's that. Secondly, if y'all want to find me and follow me and find out more about what this crazy girl is up to, it's at AWildSJ on all platforms, all social medias, all over the place. I have Patreon. Instagram's a really fun one. I do a lot of content that's very different from what you'll see on my YouTube or my X account. I do a lot of bus life stuff on Instagram, so find me there. I'm doing a lot of work right now. So speaking of, what I'm doing now in the future, I'm transitioning away from Sci-Vive. And I mean, that's always going to be the heart of what I do. And it'll always be, a huge part of, my message in general. But I am really putting on a new hat and doing a lot for RG3. And I just want to encourage y'all, if you haven't yet, check it on the ticker here, check out at Captain RG3 on TikTok and follow his account there, because we really want to start to get this to go viral. And if you have any suggestions on how to do better shorts, on how to make TikTok, make those videos go viral and make those things punch, I'd love to hear it. So, reach out to me. Again, my DMs are open. You can find me again at AWildSJ across the whole globe, the whole, gamut of social media. And then, just for the next few months, I'm going to kind of be able to chill a little bit. My family's in Southern California, and that's where I'm going to be able to park the bus over the next few months as we're kind of winding down the last few events for the Pulse Chain Tour, which are Austin, Texas, November 4th, Phoenix, Arizona, November 18th, and then the cruise out of Los Angeles to Cabo San Lucas on December 1st through the 7th. So those are the last 3 events for this year's Pulse Chain Tour. And then we're just going to kind of, come together, brainstorm, and kick it off in Vegas when we're ready for the next tour coming into 2024. And hopefully, this bull run just kind of keeps going, because I think we kicked it off, y'all. I think it's here. See these horns? You see that? Celebrate it.
All right, guys, you heard it there from SJ. Please send your best TikTok dances recommendations for her, and she will pitch it to RG3, and they will work on the choreography, and that's how we are going to reach absolute virality. Once again, thank you guys for spending some time with us here on this wonderful Wednesday evening. We know that time is your most valuable asset, and we do appreciate that you spend some of that time here with us. Once again, a big thank you to SJ for spending some of her time here with us. We know that she's a busy lady, and we greatly, greatly appreciate it. And that's it for us, guys. You can catch us once more this upcoming Sunday for our Sunday episode. We have a book club. We are going to be going over The Richest Man in Babylon this Friday with our bookmaster here, Zenith. You can find us all in all of our socials at the description below. Once again, the Telegram chat is free, and there's absolutely a ton of alpha being exchanged there. Whether you have questions about Hex, about Pulse Chain, about anything related to the Richard Hart ecosystems, there's a bunch of us there, Hexaskins, ready and willing to help you. So until next time, guys, we will see you. Once again, thank you for joining us. Take care.